morning and welcome to The Point. It is Monday, May 17th, 2021. Thank you to those of you joining us on the GBN, Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page, the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel, the website www.gbn.gd, GBN TV channel 7, 11 and 20. Good morning to the listeners of Classic 105.5, 105.9 and the folks joining us on Party Grenada and Go to FET Facebook pages. This morning, my virtual guest is forecaster at the Meteorological Office at the Morris Bishop International Airport, Mr. Fimbar Frank, and we are talking the 2021 Hurricane Atlantic season. 2021 Atlantic Hurricane season. Good morning, Mr. Frank. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Good morning to everyone locked on.
Appreciate it. Now I can put the face to the name. You usually join us every morning, not every, but some mornings for the weather forecast. So now I know what Fimbar Frank looks like. So appreciate you're joining us this morning, sir. So let's get into it. The 2021 Atlantic hurricane season starts in just about 2 weeks, June 1st, 2021. Just remind us what the predictions are for the 2021 season.
Okay, so we are looking at another active year, or the likelihood of another active year. In terms of named storms, we're looking at just about 17, and of those, about 8 are likely to strengthen beyond storm strength, so let's say category 1 or 2 or so. And then of those 8, another 4 could be major hurricanes. So we'll keep in mind, at this time, 17, 8, 4.
What does that mean for the season that the forecasters have predicted compared to previous years, and what we can expect here, especially for us here in Grenada? What we can expect from the season?
Well, it's hard to say what it will mean for us. If we look at last year was the most active in the last 10 years, right? We had like 30 named storms. But then when you look at the rainfall last year, it was not very, very good. And we did not get hit with anyone, right? In fact, last year it was very hot, especially in September. It was very, very hot. And that's because we had Teddy to the northeast of the island, and that sucked all of the moisture and left us with pretty dry and fair skies. So a lot of storms, that does not mean that we will get hit. One, it does not mean that we will not get hit. It's what to look for based on what the science is saying. But it does not speak to you to say, hey, look out, because you will get 2 or 3 or 4. No.
The 2021 hurricane season, it brings a lot of anxiety for people, including us here in Grenada, even though it has been, almost 17 years since the passage of Hurricane Ivan. In terms of our preparations, especially from the Met Office's point of view, how have preparations been and getting ready for what is expected to be another active season, and especially as it relates to the information dissemination to members of the public?
But every year is the same, because we are looking at the likelihood of being hit at any given year. So it's almost the same thing year in, year out. We are working with NADMA as we normally do. So in terms of the bulletin, most of them will be sent out via NADMA. We still do the forecast 3 times per day. And at any point, you could phone in and ask what is the forecast. We are working on our website now, so that should be up pretty soon. But in terms of the forecast and access to the forecast, it's pretty much the same thing, year in, year out. So not much change in there.
What's the process like in terms of getting the information, information the Met Office receives, and its dissemination? Because over the past years, that has always been a point of contention for members of the public with how quickly information is reached to us or gets to us for us to be able to act and respond to whatever may be happening. What's the process like with the information that the Met Office receives and then sends out?
Okay, so, well, you have to look at, are we looking at a storm? Are we looking at a wave? Are we looking at just a regular trough? Because we look at satellite pictures, we look at radar, we look at models, we look at a lot of data from NOAA, from the US, right? And it takes some time to pull everything in one. Remember, none of our tools will say rain in Guelph at 6 p.m. Nothing is saying that. Nothing is saying flooding in Tarantine on Wednesday night. So all of the tools we have to make sense of what is the moisture looking like? What is the wind field looking like? What is the lift looking like? Is there anything that will cap the lift? Is the winds or the winds brisk so that they will blow the clouds off, or the winds light so that the clouds will have time to grow? And these are the things that we are looking at. Piecing all that and keeping in mind that the tools that we are working with, they are not perfect, right? Nothing is. So sometimes with the models, what we find is we look at one, and one says rainfall X time. Look at the next one, it says rainfall Y time. We look at the third one, we say no rain at all. And you now have to make sense of all these things and come up with a focus. And I think the public does not really know the work it takes to come up with 2 or 3 lines. It's not plain, right? So right now we are using more tools than ever in terms of the way the science is, right? So we have more tools, but none of the tools will say the very same thing. And it's you on the best to make sense of all that you are seeing and come up with a few lines. And that is why we say things like a low chance of this or a medium chance of this, because we know it's not perfect. And that's why there is an update to it. So based on what we're looking at now, we're seeing a high chance of ABC. But every hour, there are data that is being fed to the models, right? And with the data comes a new run of the models. So we find that if the model at 8 p.m. says there is a high chance of rain by the next morning, when you do the following run with the data that is just at hand now, you will find that it shifts the rain from morning to midday. Or even if it doesn't shift the rain from morning to midday, it might drop the values. So now that it's not likely, but it might not be as much as the models were once saying. And then you have to keep tweaking all of these, right? So it is a challenge, but it is why we are here, and we are doing our best. Get the forecast out, pass it to NADMA, and yeah.
Even with all the work that the Met officials and forecasters have to do to put the predictions together, is there a way that this information can be disseminated faster to members of the public?
There is a way. Yes, I mean, we could put everything on our website and go and access it straight on. That is what the hope is we will get this going, right? But also you want the people to kind of get it from one source, right? One channel, because we know how things are. You can hit up anything on any page. How do we know that this is a trusted voice? And for the last few years, we have been facing a lot of this kind of thing. Somebody, well, I see this on this side, I see this on this side, and okay, so who will put it there? Because that didn't come from us. So we try to give you one channel, but even in doing so, it takes a little bit of time to walk it through and get it out. So, like, you'll find times on weekends, we might just put it out because NADMA might close, right? But on a normal day, we make a call and we say, hey, we are sending this, we are looking at this, there's a chance of this. And we kind of go back and forth with the document too before we put it out. And that takes time.
Okay, understood. Let's look at the terms used in weather forecasts and even during the hurricane season. Terms like a tropical wave, a trough. What do some of these terms mean so that when we hear them, we can be able to decipher exactly what is taking place? Just break down some of those terms for us, please.
Well, a tropical wave is a trough. It's just a type of trough, right? And what is a trough? So a trough, textbook style, they say, is an elongated low. So imagine, let's say you are walking towards town and you're by the stadium, the pressure is high, and dropping until you reach by the terminal, right? Let's say that. But when you pass town now, the pressure will start to rise again. So as you move out of town. So that area, there's a long, like a belt where the pressure is lowest. And that is a trough. The thing with the waves now, they normally move from east to west. Now, trough, there are some troughs that move from east to west too. There are troughs that move from west to east. But the thing with the African wave or the tropical wave, they normally come off the African coast, and you see that flare up as they reach over the ocean. And you know in every 4 or 5 days, typically you will have one crossing, right? It's just a pattern that we see year in, year out. So what is a trough? So a trough is an elongated low. The pressure is lowest on the axis of the trough. And normally you will get pretty low light wind speed. So, which is different from a ridge. A ridge is the opposite of trough, where the pressure is highest, right? And ridge, right? So just try to walk on that a little bit. So troughs, most times, and the low levels will cause inflow and lifting, most times, right? And then it depends on the wind speed, but that is kind of making it too technical now. So what you really want for clouds, you want inflow at the bottom, lift, and then outflow at top with the moisture and so to help form the clouds. So trough is a popular term. And then from trough, we have everything is growing. First, because from the wave, you get everything else has a strengthen until it goes all the way up to hurricanes. But a trough is actually, or a wave is actually the seed. So from that, it grows once things are right.
The hurricane terms, what are expected or what classifies a hurricane, a storm? What was the other term that just came to mind again, boy? The tropical warning, tropical watch. What qualifies for these things to take place and the differences between storm, hurricane, strong hurricane.
A depression.
Depression. That's the word I was looking for.
Right. So when you have just a trough, just an elongated low pressure moving through, it's an open wave. So a wave, a trough is a wave, right? Once it starts to close on the surface, it then strengthens from wave to depression, a depression after that. Then, once the wind speed around the center gets to 38 miles per hour, it becomes a storm. Then you're going up. Once it strengthens, going until you reach 74 miles per hour and plus, it's a hurricane. Strengthening beyond that, the winds now reach up to 115 miles per hour. It becomes a major. That is when Cat 3 starts, right? And beyond that, it's just going. So when you reach up to Category 5, it's at the top of the scale. Anything above like 150, 155 miles per hour around there is just Category 5. So even if you're at 250, whatever. Well, and that's just how we group them here in this part of the world. So like in Asia, it might be different. You hear they use typhoons. Basically, they are the same thing, but it's just different parts of the world. We call them by different names.
There was a question on Facebook that asked, how many weather stations does the MBIE monitor on the island?
Okay, so man station, we have one here, but right now there's a network in terms of rainfall that we can measure rain. We are up to about 55. I mean, we don't own all. Some are owned by land use, some owned by NAWASA, but we share the data every month, right? So if you're looking at what the airport owns, it's just one. But we could access data for about 55 or so different spots throughout the estate in terms of rainfall. Yeah.
And how does that help the Met Office with the data that it collects in terms of rainfall and the what you compile at the end of the month? Because I know when you usually give the weather report, you say this is how much rainfall we've had for the month. So how does monitoring the 55 help you in the job that you do? And do you think that more is needed on the island?
Well, okay, so let me take the second part of the question first. More is needed, not really. What we would like though is if the data could come to us more real time, let's say every minute, right? Because if you have, let's say, flash flooding, where from the start of the rain to the flood, you're looking at how much hours of it? 5 or 6. If you want to get the data at the end of the day, what difference does that make at that point when an hour of rain is enough to give you flooding? You want the data right now. So in terms of the amount of stations, it is not bad, right? Because we are a pretty small state. The question is how quickly we could get the data and make sense and make use of it for the warnings that we need to issue. And that is the challenge. So, like I say, we work with land use and so, but they will send us their data at the end of every month, right? And there is no rule. I cannot tell them, go out and get me the rain by 8, because we don't have that kind of thing. At the end of the month, they share what they got, we pass what we got. But that does not help much for warnings. It will help for the bulletins that we issue, the climate bulletin, looking at whether it was above the average or not, right? That is good because we're looking at a summary for the whole month. But data needs to be real time too if you want to save life. And so that is a little bit of a sticking point. But so we can access maybe, I think, quite close to 40, like let's say every hour or so, right? And even with that, we have to keep in mind too that there's machines, right? So some of them might be done at any given time, and the technical staff has to go out and visit and fix. And so so even if you could get close to 40, you might have two or three that is not working now. So then you kind of lessen the pool that you have. Then you start throwing a lot of little different things. But in the main, we have some stations. And for rainfall, it's far better than, let's say, when I joined here, it's far better now.
All right. On that note, Mr. Frank, let's take a break and then we're going to come back and continue the discussion. We're speaking the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season with forecaster Fimbar Frank at the Met Office at the Meteorological Office at the MBIA. To the point, we'll be right back.
Do you hear what I hear? Listen to the ocean and you will hear a cry for help. The ocean is hurting, and we are the source of the hurt. But we can stop and start to heal our ocean by preventing pollution from getting into our waterways. It can start with you. Join an active organization, or better yet, make a personal commitment. Commit not for just one day in the year, but for the rest of your life. Let's dispose of our plastic and other waste responsibly, and let's start building resilience. Let the healing begin.
This message is brought to you by the OECS Commission with funding from the Government of Norway. REMLIT, tackling ocean pollution from tooth to sooth.
Grenada's chief medical officer has ordered that all confirmed positive COVID-19 individuals, their contacts, and members of their household must remain in quarantine or isolation for 14 days. Anyone who fails to comply with this order will be in breach of the Public Health COVID-19 Regulations 2020 and is guilty of an offense. Upon summary conviction, that person will be liable to a penalty of up to $10,000. A message from the Ministry of Health.
Welcome back to the Point. We're speaking with forecaster at the Met Office, Fimbar Frank, as we prepare for the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season. Before I go to some of the questions on social media and our landline, let me ask Mr. Frank about, what should I say, early hurricanes. The chances or possibilities of there being early storms / hurricanes happening outside of the June 1st time of year. When last has that happened, and is this something that can happen again in 2021?
Well, it could happen. I believe it happened as late as last year. There was one or two in May, and you could get one even now. But once you have the key things that you need, you have warm seas, you have fairly low wind shear, you have that lifting, you have moisture. So you have about 4 or 5 things, you could get one. Because remember, for it to be a storm, you want to get that close low and the wind speed around the low, reaching up to about, let's call it for safety, 40 miles per hour. That will definitely make it a storm, right? And that could happen at any time of year once you have about 4 or 5 things in place. So there's no rule. I mean, storms don't sit around and wait. It's June, boy. Okay, let's go. You could get it at any point.
I like that part. All right, let's now go to our viewers and listeners who may have comments, questions, queries, concerns. The landline number 435-2041. That's also the WhatsApp. Please, only written messages on WhatsApp. And you can continue to post your comments, questions, queries, concerns on the GBN, Grenada Broadcasting Network's Facebook page and the Grenada Broadcasting Network's YouTube channel. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Blossom. How are you?
I'm good.
I would like to join Fimbar Frank and assist him as a retired meteorologist. First of all, the tropical waves, the main origin of them is the Sahara Desert over Africa, in Africa, where you have this semi-permanent low-pressure area. Just as how you have this semi-permanent high-pressure area over the Atlantic, you have this semi-permanent low-pressure area over the Sahara Desert, where there's lots of rising air and dust storm and stuff, which brings across the haze and stuff. So the origin of most, if not all, the tropical waves for a season is over the Sahara Desert. And these tropical waves come across, and if the atmospheric dynamics is pretty okay, they pick up a lot of moisture, and probably will develop first into an area of disturbed weather and then into a tropical depression, which we call a cyclone, the initial stage of a cyclone. This term cyclone is used for depression, tropical storm, and hurricane. So for me, a tropical depression is a baby cyclone, and a tropical storm is a teenage cyclone, and a hurricane is an adult cyclone, if I may put it simple for the ordinary people to understand. When they hear some bulletin and they hear in cyclone. Because we in the Caribbean here, we use depression, tropical storm, and hurricane. Whereas in India, in the Bay of Bengal and India, and so they would use cyclone. So they never use the term hurricane in India. In China and in the areas like Taiwan and so around China, they use typhoon, which is the same thing like a hurricane, and which is an advanced stage of a tropical cyclone. So I thought I should come in here to assist my cousin and good friend and co-worker, Fimbar Frank, to make it a little more explicit for the public.
And could you just identify yourself for us, please?
Oh, I'm David Robertson, a retired meteorologist.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Robertson.
Yes. So this is one of the areas I find confusing, because I did a survey, and not even teachers, when I question teachers, what is a cyclone, they kind of at lost. So I thought I should break it down kind of simple to make them understand, So when they hear the term from NADMA, and so they would know.
Okay.
Now, the next thing concerning the forecasting of hurricane and so forth season, due to the uncertainty involved and the complex things involved, I personally don't take one source, like, the Colorado State University or, say, the National Weather Service of America. Because you have the UK Met Service also put out a forecast. The Japan Met Service also put out a forecast. And the European Union Meteorological Service also put out a forecast. So if I was NADMA or the services, I will try to take all and, look at all and see, come with a median, like, take all the assemble of all the things and all the forecasts and see. Because if 4 out of the 5 forecasts is forecasting a pretty severe season, tell yourself it's most likely that you will have a pretty severe season. So it's good to take, the forecast from the different, although over the years, the Colorado State University has been pretty good, So, normally we've been using that, but it's good to take the results from all the different forecast areas.
All right. Thank you so much.
Anyway, all the best to you.
Thank you very much.
The listeners and Fimbar Frank.
All right. Have a good one. You'd like to reply or?
No. Well said. He's one of my trainers here, right? So when he speaks, it's good talk. It's good talk.
I like that. A question on Facebook. What's the average rainfall of Grenada and how is climate change affecting rainfall on the island?
Well, rain, as you know, will vary from month to month, right? So the average rainfall and also from place to place. So what is average rainfall? It's pretty difficult to answer. But dry season, the average, let's say in March, could be somewhere close to 30. And September could be somewhere close to 150 or so. So you see how rainfall varies with time, but it also varies with place. Because if you are over the hills or like way in the mountain, the rainfall that you get there on an average or a given month could be 10 times more than what we get here, right? So to give you an average, it is difficult. It's difficult. It varies from time to time and from place to place.
Somebody on the WhatsApp is inquiring how accurate is weather forecasting. I know it's a prediction, and you have to put the information you have together. But let's say on an average, if I ask you how accurate it is, how much percentage would you tell me the weather forecast is?
It's increasing. It's getting better because now we have more tools. To give a figure, it would be hard, but the thing is, we have so many tools now that you will fall pretty close. The problem is, or the challenge is, a lot of the tools, they don't say the same thing. So then you might look at 3 or 4 things, but then you now have to kind of get an average, which makes it hard. But it is better, let's say now, than 20 years ago. And it will only get better as the models are better, the satellite pictures are better, the radar that we're using, they are getting better. And just the more time you spend on the desk, the better you would also get. So, can give you a figure, but it's going along the right path. It's getting better.
All right. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. I appreciate Mr. Robinson a while ago when he stepped in and gave those areas of information, which is very, very vital. That's why you see it is not necessary when you get rid of those retirees is to put them behind the mines as though they're not important anymore. They always have to come in and help those young. They really are necessary to have always in the mind of thinking and leaving them there to give that kind of counsel. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, let me go to Facebook. Question on Facebook: is the MBIA using technology such as GIS in monitoring the trend of rainfall in the country?
Yes, we are. We do GIS map every month. In terms of the models here, we look at about 4 or 5. We look at GFS, common one. We have a few from Meteo France. You can access those from UK Met. So on any given shift, you could look at, let's say, 4 or 5. In terms of the tools, like I've said, yes, we are using them. But the issue is the tools do not always say the same thing. And then you now have to make sense of what you're seeing and come up with a few lines for the people. We don't always get it right, but that is just the nature of the game we are in.
Good morning, caller.
Good morning. Mr. Frank. Good morning. Mr. Frank, Mr. Robinson is from the East. I'm from the East, too. And bear in mind that teachers, or you could tell Mr. Robinson that teachers are not Mr. Know-all. Not Mr. Know-all. They have to know certain things, basic things that to help the students. Anyhow, I'm always wondering, because I'm not a Met man, but I always wonder, why is it that they are always talking about the rainfall of Point Saline when they're giving the weather forecast for the Grenada? And I asked that already to someone that was on the air. Do they have, well, let's say, I'm not a teacher, but to engage and rain this and rain that in different parts of the area. So that is why I find it was so strange when you all, I don't know if you were involved at the time, talking about the rainfall of Point Saline. Is that the rainfall of the whole island? And in your statement a few minutes back, you talk about mountainous areas, you talk about plains and this and that, and valleys, and you talk about ridge. I don't know if you're talking about ridge, mountainous ridge, and so on. So I find these things are not accurate, because you are always talking about rainfall in Point Saline. As if Point Saline is the whole part of the country, is the only part. Anyhow,
okay.
I thank Mr. Robinson for raising those points. Thank you very much. And I'm asking also, why is it that these things started around the tropics? They come up, as you say, from around Africa. Explain that to me and possible to the public.
Thank you very much. Sir Frank?
Okay. So why do we talk about the rainfall within the last day or so that we measured on here at the airport? Well, we have it right here. It is just on the next side of a piece of glass here, right? So it's at hand, right? If we got to give you that full list, like I say, for all the stations that we have access to, that would take a very long time, right? So the hope is that you can access all these things on our website once it is up. You can view that. But there's keep in mind that there's a limit to the forecast time that we have, right? So we can't just keep saying 12 things or, But perhaps what we could do is try to give you a little bit more. We could say within the last day, the most rain fell A, least rain fell B, blah, blah, blah. And we chose a few spots we say in the mountains, this, on the coastline, that. And these are things that we could do. Of course, it will cut into the radio time. So I don't know if the media houses will want us to do that. But if this is what the people want and we are here to serve the people, then fine, we could do that. But if you want a full scope of the rainfall within the last day, then it would be better that you access it via a website or an app or so, where you could click and spend the whole day if you want to. But to tell us to give you more or give you the full thing on the radio in the morning when we normally deal with about 5 or 6 of them stations, right? From 7, we keep going as one put on the phone and next one call. As we end this one and the next one calls. So the time is tight. So that's why we have to kind of cut back and we just say, okay, rainfall here within the last day. Because we have it. It's right there, as we say. So why troughs or waves form of the African coast? Now, there are different schools of thought about waves, right? Some people say some studies show that they actually circle the globe month in, month out, right? But it has a lot to do with, one, they're driven by temperature, they're driven by moisture, they are what we call, at least the waves, they are whole core. Now, it's only until they become a cyclone that they are warm core. And you have to think about now, where do we have lifting and sinking along that trough? It so happens that coming off the African coast, or just over the western part of the continent, we have a few things that are working there. We have low level jet. We have the moisture. We have the turning of the winds. We have the heat. We have some hills too. So these are all things that will help them to flare up before leaving the African coast, or just after they leave the African coast. And of course, they coming over the ocean now, most times, like even now, it's pretty warm, right? You need that heat to feed the moisture into the troughs, into the waves, and create that lift that is key for cloud growth. So you have a few things that work out just right. It's like if I don't know, I mean, I can't bake, but if you're baking and you have A, B, C, but you don't have, I don't know, yeast sauce or something, it would work out, but it wouldn't be right? So you kind of need everything to fall in place at the right time. And this is what we have with the African coast. It creates that, or West Africa as a whole.
Somebody on WhatsApp is inquiring, why is it that in the weather report the biometric pressure is always below or above normal and rising, but never falling?
So they have what we call, there is the diurnal pressure variation. Every day, the pressure will be highest around 10 a.m. and 10 p.m. and then lowest around 4 a.m. and 4 p.m. It happens. It's almost like tides, right? So you get highs and lows. So we will give the weather with you guys at 7 a.m. So as I said, the low is normally around 4 a.m. and it will rise until around 10 a.m. You call that 7. So we in the middle there. It is rising. You might find it falling. Let's say we have a trough coming, or a wave, which I say it is the waves are elongated low. So if you have that coming, it means that low pressure is coming, right? Approaching you. And if it's overhead by that time, you might just find the pressure dropping. So it might still be above the average. Keeping in mind the average is 10, 13.2. It might be above that, but it could be falling if there's a trough, a surface trough, that is. So good question. It means that you actually take a note. But there is also a good answer.
So it's really just the time of day that you give the forecast. That's why it's always
right.
Right.
If you call it midday, every day at midday, most likely it will be followed.
Okay, all right. Let me see before we close off. I'm making sure there are no questions before I ask my own. All right. There was a question on Facebook as well about getting children that do geography to possibly do weather monitoring in some stations or so. My question, though, is how can we help our younger ones understand the weather forecasting and predictions, and maybe even get more into the industry? What role can we play to get more of our young people interested in it, and even if it's just for education purposes?
Well, pre-2020, school tours were like regular here, right? I mean, at the end of every term, we normally get a few. Right? So, and most times it's a geography class, most times. So that is one way you get the tours and so on. I have done a few Zoom calls with classes, just sharing a little bit. Up to last year when we had that dense haze, I did a Zoom call. So there are little ways that you can get things done. In terms of like getting them to get the hands-on rain gauges and them kind of things. I believe even one of the secondary schools, not in term, but there was a gauge at one of the schools that the geography class used to man. I don't think that is the case right now. But this is one good way to get them to get a foot in, because once you start to go out there and check the temperature, check the rain, check the wind speed, you really get a different feel for it because you're doing it now. So maybe we could get that going. Of course, everything calls for funds and planning and so. But yeah, so that can be done because it was done at some point.
And final question as we wrap, somebody on Facebook, what system do you have set up on the Sister Isle to monitor the weather conditions in Carriacou and PG Martinique for the people who listen and get their weather news or information mostly?
So Carriacou, there are gauges there too. There is one at Lauriston at the airport. We will normally get rainfall from Nawassa. I believe they have about 2 or 3 of the gauges there. In PM, there are two gauges there that we use the data every month in our bulletin. So yeah, we have been using the rainfall from the islands, and they play a very key role in just helping us to paint a picture as to the spread of rain across the state. Most times the figures are not very high, but we have been using them still.
Any final thoughts? You'd like to recap what we can expect for the 2021 Atlantic hurricane season?
Right, so like I've said, the figures to keep in mind, 17, 8, and 4. It does not mean because it is an active year or likely to be an active year, it does not mean that we will get hit at end point. But it means this is the time to put things in place, have your kit at hand, have your plan. This is your time to see that everyone in the household knows what the plan is. In the event of a storm, we're doing A, B, C. Tom, you're doing this. Jane, you do that, and work out that from now. This is the time if you want to clean drains, if you want to trim your trees, get all this done now, because it does not take a storm. We have seen serious flooding from tropical waves. A slow moving wave could dump a lot of rain, and it's not even a storm. A lot of us, we are scared of the wind, but most of the damage is done by water. Water is the real killer. So it does not have to be storm strength. It could be a wave. And don't wait until you hear we're under a warning or a watch to start to put things in place. Start now. June 1st is less than 2 weeks out. Get things done now. And we hope for the best. I mean, because for me, I really can't take a storm now. I mean, it is my field, but I really don't want to face another one. It's just too much. It's just too much. And the way the world is now, no.
I agree. I'm on your side with that notion there. Thank you so very much, Mr. Frank, for being our guest this morning. Appreciate. Thank you for the information as we prepare for the start of the hurricane season in 2 weeks, as you said. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And enjoy the rest of your Monday.
All right. Same to you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Forecaster at the Meteorological Office at the Morris Bishop International Airport, Fimbar Frank. We thank him so much for being our guest this morning. And thank you, viewers and listeners, for tuning in. The 2021 Atlantic hurricane season starts June 1st, 2021, which is in just about 2 weeks and 1 day. So start preparing now. That's the end of my time for today, the end of the program. I'll be back tomorrow morning, God willing. Mid-Morning Buzz is up next. I believe Joseph will be making his way into the studio, celebrated his birthday yesterday, so there's no telling what he will do on the consoles. So I leave you in almost safe hands. Enjoy the rest of your Monday, everybody, and I'll be back tomorrow, God willing.